Through the ages, the powers of good and evil have been at work amongst us. Through the passages of time, many have attempted to probe and distinguish between myth and fact. What is innocence? What is purity? What is corruption?
Look, ugly one-horned mule.
What is evil?
Hey everyone, happy Halloween. I actually have a seasonally appropriate episode for the holiday today. I feel like that hardly ever happens, but I guess I have managed something a little scary for October most years, so I'm sort of keeping up with the tradition. Today's episode I recorded several months ago, but I didn't get a chance to sit down and edit it right away, and then I decided to save it for today, Halloween, because it stars the devil. Not really. The character is named Darkness. He's not actually the devil, but he's a big, red, medieval, demon-looking thing, so it's close enough that I figured this is the perfect time to release it. For this episode, I'm joined once again by my friend Sam. This is a movie she told me about years ago. It actually has been her favorite movie since she was little, and I'd never seen it, so I thought it'd be the perfect thing for us to do a podcast on.
I am Darkness. Ridley Scott's legend.
So this is your favorite movie of all time?
This is my number one favorite movie of all time. It has never ever been a question. Yeah, I've been watching this since I was probably like 5. Unlike the other movies that I watched since I was 5, this was one I was allowed to watch.
So what is it about this one that you love so much?
Everything. It's just, you don't get a lot of fantasy movies that are just so, I mean, it's 80s, so it's cheesy. But I mean, it's got unicorns, it's got Tim Curry as the devil, we get a young Tom Cruise, Sara is good, elves, dwarves, the soundtrack, the practical effects, the goblins, the witches, the creatures. It's just, what's not to love? Especially when you love fantasy shows. Nowadays, fantasy shows are either great like Lord of the Rings, or they're bad like, the Hobbit movies. And it's just an old school fantasy show, and it's just, when I was a little girl, it was just everything I could ever wanted in a movie. Growing up, I realized I liked Tim Curry as Darkness maybe a little too much. But again, as someone who loves practical effects and makeup, Tim Curry as the devil, or Darkness, I guess, he's not the devil. His makeup and practical effects are so good. I mean, they even got nominated for an Oscar. They didn't win it. They should have. I don't know what else was nominated that year, but just looking at Tim Curry and not knowing that it's Tim Curry until, like, you laughed when you saw his laugh. It's only his upper lip you can see, but yeah, I don't know. Everything about it. It's just my favorite movie. Yeah, Rob Bottin, he's the one who came in and designed the special effects and the makeup and stuff, and he also did The Howling, which is another one of my favorite movies, and The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which is another favorite movie, so I'm not surprised that the special effects in this movie are so good and the makeup's good, because that guy, they really know how to do their makeup and practical effects.
So yeah, Tim Curry is the standout of this.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
Was great, as always. It was weird seeing Tom Cruise as a young Tom Cruise.
Yeah, this was like his 7th movie, and it makes me laugh because right before this he made Outsiders, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And then he went to make Top Gun immediately after this, which I'm like, his acting skills, like, he's not a bad actor in Legend. He's fine. But for him to go from Legend immediately to make Top Gun, like, it just kind of, I thought there'd be a few movies between Legend and Top Gun, but nope, he went 1985 Legend, 1986 Top Gun. I was like, wow.
I thought it was interesting. I read that Johnny Depp, Jim Carrey, and Robert Downey Jr. were all considered for his role.
I read that too. I'm so glad Tom Cruise got it.
Yeah. Especially not Jim Carrey.
Oh my God, that... I mean, Jim Carrey has proved he can be a serious actor, but that was only quite later in his life.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine Ace Ventura in Legend.
I could see him doing Darkness.
Or a goblin.
That too.
A goblin, maybe. But not...
The Grinch is practically a goblin.
Oh, he is, yeah. Yeah, we know he can sit through hours of makeup, but... And, I mean, a young Robert Downey Jr. maybe. I haven't really seen him in too much other than, like, Iron Man, but...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad it went to Tom Cruise.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see somebody before they become huge.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, that would have been his next movie was Top Gun, and
that's probably what...
That's pretty much launched him.
Yeah.
I mean, The Outsiders he's really good in, but everybody in that movie's really good, and they're all so young, so... But yeah, it was right after that, Top Gun, so... That's when we get the Tom Cruise we know today. It's kind of crazy.
And then we have Mia Sara as Princess Lily.
Mm-hmm. And it was her first movie.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize she's married to Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
All I know is she was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and that's the only other movie I know her from. Because I looked through her list, and I'm like, no, just those two is the only two I've seen. I recognize her from. And of course, Tim Curry's stage presence and movie filmography was already like 4 sheets long by the time he did Legend. I mean, he was already a legend by the time he played Darkness.
And most of the rest of the people I was not familiar with.
Mm-mm.
You have David Bennett as Honeythorn Gump, who apparently was 19 in that role. I thought he was like 12.
Yeah, he was a little guy. Well, and you commented when we watched it that they dubbed his voice.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because his accent was too German. I'm like, well, it's a fantasy fairy tale. A lot of those are German. But I am glad they dubbed it. I can't imagine him sounding any different.
Yeah, the dubbing was done by the same person who played Blix. The leader of the goblins, Alice Playton. I'm not familiar with her either, but I recognize that she'd done a lot of voice work in things that I had seen over the years.
Yeah,
so.
When I looked over her list, I was like, oh, she does a lot of voice work, because I think I've seen some of this.
Well, I feel like the voice was the biggest thing for these two characters anyway, so it makes sense.
Yep.
Billy Barty as Screwball, Cork Hubert as Brown Tom, Peter O'Farrell as Pox, and Annabelle Layton as Una. Didn't know any of them.
Nope.
And Kieran Shawn as Blunder. He was in all Lord of the Rings movies, so I recognized him from behind the scenes, but I actually confused him with Deep Roy, and then his Wikipedia page said that he's often confused for Deep Roy.
I'm pretty sure we had to pause the movie because you were just like, I know that guy from somewhere. Is it this guy? And I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Well, I was thinking it was the guy who played all the Oompa Loompas in the recent Willy Wonka movie. But that was Deep Roy.
Uh-huh.
So.
And, well, when you pulled it up and we looked at them side by side, it was like, oh yeah, they do look
Especially
quite
since
similar.
This was in the 80s, so he's much younger.
And he's also got makeup and prosthetics plastered on his face, too. Like all of them, except for Tom Cruise and Mia Sara.
Well, the one that surprised me the most was the person who played Meg Mucklebones.
Yes, I love him.
Robert Picardo, who was the doctor on Star Trek Voyager, which is the Star Trek that I watched growing up.
He's done a lot of creature work like that. I think he likes to be under all the makeup.
I could tell whoever was playing it was having a blast.
Oh, yeah. He was having a good time with that role. Well, it's Meg Mucklebones. She's awesome. Again, another reason why I like this show, because you're just like, wow, that Swamp Witch is cool. Like, I want to create characters like that.
So apparently there are 2 versions of this. We watched the original.
We watched the theatrical.
Okay. And then I watched
the director's cut.
I think I liked the one that we watched more. I was kind of bored.
I have tried to watch the director's cut, but like what I told you when I let you borrow it, it's not the same soundtrack. I mean, I like Jerry Goldsmith. He's a great composer, but that 80s Tangerine Dream soundtrack, that's what makes it for me. I can't imagine watching Legend and not hearing Love by the Sun.
It also just seemed Well, I mean, it is longer, but it seemed so much longer.
Mm-hmm. And it's not. It's only, I think, a few minutes longer.
But I feel like there was different scenes that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of dragged.
Well, and they cut scenes. Like, the thing that got me the most in the director's cut is they cut the scene where they show Blix with the unicorn horn when they cut it off. I'm like, why would you cut that scene? When he holds it up, or she holds it up, I guess Blix is played by a woman, but they don't specify. It's a goblin. And I'm like, why would you cut that scene out? That's kind of an important scene. But yeah, it mostly just kind of extends a few scenes, and for some reason the theatrical cut dubbed over the woman telling Lily she's a princess, which I never understood why you'd hide the fact that she's a princess.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as a kid, I'm like, well, she's clearly a princess.
I would just
Or
by
like
the
a
way she
royal
was
house.
dressed, I would have guessed.
Yeah, because I'm like, she's dressed like Maid Marian in the Robin Hood movie. Like, she looks like a princess or like a lady of a high house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't know why you would hide that, but
So who was that family that she was visiting at the beginning?
I think I think it's just someone she knows, probably a commoner in her kingdom, and I think it's just whoever she stopped to pester whenever she was going off to see Jack. They don't really explain it. I think it's just probably someone she knows.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a house she's visited since she was a little girl.
Well, they acted like they were old friends.
Yeah,
so.
they were very close. So my guess would just be somebody she's probably just always gone to visit when she goes into the forest.
Mm-hmm. So then, if she, in the theatrical cut, is she a princess, or did they take that out completely?
I don't know. They never call her a princess anywhere, but when they leave at the end, I've always assumed that's where they were going back to, was her kingdom or her home, but I think it's more up to your interpretation. You can look at her as a princess or a woman from a rich house or just somebody who doesn't live in the forest and dresses very nice.
So then, is Jack human?
I have always assumed Jack was not human because they call him Jack of the Green, which is a green man, which is from a lot of Irish and Scottish and English folklore. The Green Man. It's a really long, complicated history, but he pretty much like represents like fertility and spring and life, and oddly enough, life, death, and rebirth, which is basically what happens in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They go through life, they go through the winter of death, and then when they bring the unicorn back, rebirth. But I always assumed Jack was an immortal because Gump calls him a forest child, and then his official name in the movie is Jack of the Green, which is another name for the Green Man. So I've always assumed Jack was not human.
Okay.
That he's just an immortal forest child who protects the forest. Maybe he's still a little young, which is why he makes a few mistakes.
So did they change his relationship to Gump between the two versions of the movie? Because I thought, when we first watched it, I thought they knew each other, but in the longer version, it was like they were meeting for the first time.
I assumed they had never met before, because when Gump... I got the impression that maybe Jack and Gump knew of each other, but they had never formally met, because Gump introduces himself as Honeythorn Gump at your service.
Oh, okay. I must have just missed that, because I was watching it last night, and I was like, wait a minute, I thought they were friends. Why is... there was this whole extremely long scene. I feel like that scene had to have been lengthened. It felt so much longer.
Yeah, I've only seen little parts of the director's cut. I never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I just kind of looked up the clips on YouTube because I tried to watch it. I'm like, it's not the right soundtrack. I don't like it.
It's not the same. I was bored, and I feel like the music wasn't as good, even though the music was more
kind of fitting.
It made it feel more timeless. But it needed the 80s to soundtrack.
It needs that 80s. It's an 80s movie. It needs that 80s soundtrack. Pretty much the consensus is if you watched the theatrical cut as a kid, it's your favorite. If you watched the director's cut when you were older, because I don't think as a kid you'd probably get through it, it's your favorite. So it's kind of like whichever one you watched first is going to be the one that you like the most.
Well, I guess that still holds up for me because I watched the original first. So, yeah, I'm watching it last and I was like, this does not feel the same.
No, it doesn't feel the same.
So I guess the main point of the movie is the Lord of Darkness is sending the goblins to kill the unicorn. Or both of them?
Both of them.
And then he wants the horn? Or, like, what? Why did he need the horn? Did it ever explain?
They never explained why they collected. I know in the show they call them alicorns. And I don't know if that's the official name for a unicorn horn. I've heard it used different ways, but they never say if he actually wants the horns. I think he just wants them dead. And we know by the end of the show, if you put the alicorn back, the unicorn comes back to life. So it makes sense he would want them to keep them separated from the dead animal. So you can't just bring him back to life suddenly. But he just wants them dead because he wants the world frozen in darkness so he can leave his lair.
Okay. That was one of the things I was like, this doesn't exactly make sense, but also it's a fairy tale, so I'm just going to go with it, because I was like, why is everything freezing when the unicorn dies?
Yeah, it's because he's, well, like Gump says, you know, they trapped you, we've been trapped in a season of death, and so when time freezes there, everything just gets frozen over because it's all frozen in time.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of times I'll overthink things, and then with a movie like this, it's just like, it's a fairy tale.
It's a fantasy. You just go with it. Like, fantasies usually don't make too much sense. It's just, you just go with the story.
There's also the fairy, and I don't remember if I mentioned this while we were watching it, but I thought again last night, I was like, the sounds this fairy is making reminds me of the aliens in Signs.
The little squeaks and chitters and stuff? Never really thought about it that way. I always just thought she was just being an annoying little brat. Because that's how fairies are in old folklore.
Yeah.
They're annoying, they're pestering, and they'll eat you. I don't think Una would eat anybody. But a lot of fairies do. I just assumed she was just being... She reminds me a lot of, in Legend of Zelda, the little fairy that goes with Link.
Oh.
Who, hey, listen. You know, it just kind of reminded me of that a lot. Like, just always annoying people, always pestering people, but you need her there. But she's also just like this annoying little... Because she doesn't tell Gump who she is. He doesn't know she can transform until they're trapped. Because he calls her a... What does he call her? He calls her a sprite. I don't know if he calls her a hateful sprite or something along those lines. So, yeah, like, he don't trust her either. But I did always like Una as a kid. I just wish the special effects at the time would have given her wings a little bit more to do instead of just stuck to her back.
Yeah.
But I always liked her design because it is very otherworldly and it is very non-human the way she looks.
There's something about her that seemed familiar, and I wasn't sure if it was the way she was made up or the actress, but I didn't recognize anything else the actress had been in, so I don't know. It's probably the way she was made up similar to some other movie. Or
other movies after Legend. Her contacts always struck me because they're so vibrant. I'm assuming they're contacts because her pupils don't really dilate when the sun shines in her face. But it always just kind of struck me how vibrant her eyes were, and I always liked how wild her hair was because she's a fairy. You know, she's wild and free, just like she says.
And I don't remember if this was in the theatrical version or not, but I noticed it last night when Lily goes back to the family that are her friends. There's a frozen baby.
Yeah, I know there's a crib. I don't know if they show the baby.
Well, they definitely showed it in the one I watched last night.
Okay, so they must have cut that from the theatrical, because I know there's a crib, because I know she looks at it, but I don't recall if I see a baby, or if it's just like when it rocks, you just barely see it. And I know as a kid, I never could decide, I'm like, is it a baby or is it a doll?
I thought that too, but I was like, well, it's obviously meant to be a baby.
Yeah, well, I know that. Like, it's supposed to be a baby. But I'm always like, is it her baby?
I guess I just assumed that it was the couple's kid.
Yeah.
Because there was a man and a woman, so...
Well, we
they
don't
probably
see
had a
the
kid.
man in the theatrical cut.
I wondered that too,
Yep,
because I was like,
we only
was
see
there
her.
2 people before?
Nope, in the theatrical cut, we only see her.
Okay. So that's another difference. And I did wonder that last night. I was like, I only remember the lady.
Yeah, we only see her. Nell. That's her name. Nell.
Okay. So I guess maybe it's just me forgetting, but was the quest to save the unicorn, or was it to save Lily, or was it both?
I think for Jack, it was to save Lily, and for Gump, it was to save the unicorn, and they just kind of had to work together.
Okay.
I don't think Jack going in really cared about the unicorn at first. I don't think not until he talked to the mayor and said, we have to get the horn back. But I think for Jack, the number one priority was Lily.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he knew he had to get the unicorn horn back. But I think for Jack, if he couldn't save her, well then, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Because his number one priority at the end is to save Lily, and Gump's is to save the unicorn. So I think they're working together because they both know what they have to do, but I think Jack's thoughts are very much directed toward Lily and not so much the unicorn, because Gump and his friends, that's who they're after. They don't care about Lily. The way they look at it, she caused all this. And then by the end, she's, by his side in her pretty little dress, so...
What do you think of all of the elf creatures? I'm assuming you like them since you grew up with the movie, but they seem to me like something that could be really annoying for some people.
I think if there would have been more of them, it would have been really annoying, but growing up with it, I liked Brown, Tom, and Screwball. Like, they're annoying, but they're not, because they know what they're doing. Like, they know how to do things, and they follow Gump, and they do as ordered, even though they whine about it. I think if they would have been in the movie more, they would have been a lot more annoying. But since it cuts between them and everything else so much, I don't really mind them too much. But I can see how they probably would be very annoying little characters, but I liked them, and I liked their designs, and I liked how they looked and how they talked, and,
What about Blunder?
That, I don't really have...
Well, like, what was up with him anyway?
I don't know. I don't know if he got caught and he was working undercover, like maybe, or if he got recruited. They don't really talk too much about why he's there and what he's doing. Because, he turns on him real quick.
Yeah.
And kind of outs himself immediately. So I don't know if he was working undercover or if he got too close and got caught and just decided to just stay there and just observe. He didn't really strike me as too smart. So I don't know.
No.
And Gump definitely didn't know he was there. And Gump's kind of in charge. So I think somewhere on the cutting room floor is probably more of his story.
Probably. It's probably one of those things where it's like, yeah, we don't need to explain this.
Right. Or maybe it could be kind of like a Lord of the Rings thing too, where maybe the bad guys take the elves and turn them into villains, because that's what happened in Lord of the Rings with the elves, is the elves got corrupted and became like the Uruk-hai and the goblins and all that stuff. So maybe it's just they took a page from that. Maybe they just were like, what the hell? It's supposed to be partially a kid's show. Let's have him be an annoying little character who we're going to bake into a cake. Or a pie.
Well, we should also talk about the part where Lily is not necessarily taken, but sort of enchanted away.
Seduced. I always looked at it as she was being seduced. You're talking about like when she is captured and...
With the dancing dress.
With the dancing in the dress and everything. I always looked at that as... Because Darkness, when he sees her, he wants her. And he asks his mother, because you hear the voice on the wind, because he just wants to take her. And he said, and the voice says, charm her, woo her, seduce her. So he's giving her all the things a princess would want: jewelry, wine, food. And I think it's him seducing her, because he tells her later he loves her, but it's not love, it's lust, because that's the whole point of Legend. Like with the opening crawl, they talk about no light without dark, no love without hate, you know. And I think it's just her just not knowing what to do, because she's never been in a situation like that before. And she's scared and she's alone. I think she just allows herself to be seduced by this, you know, in a moment of weakness. Because she doesn't stay that way. You know, she's weak for a moment, but she still talks back to him. She still betrays him. So she's stronger than she looks, but I think in that moment was just a little slip. And
So you don't think she was pretending at that moment?
no, I don't think so.
Well, I know that scene is one of the scenes where the music made a big difference.
Yeah, it's more like a jewelry box lullaby kind of thing in the director's cut, isn't it?
It was boring.
Oh.
It just felt different. It was like, I don't know. I need to watch them side by side to figure out exactly what I thought, but
I know
this does not feel the same.
No, I do like the music. I mean, obviously I like the music more in the theatrical, but it's got more of like a beat to it. You know, you're just like, I can see how if she heard this music, she would want to dance with this sparkly person, you know, and be seduced by that and kind of be lulled into thinking maybe this isn't going to hurt her when all she's seen is scary things that look like they're going to get her. Since everything moves and watches her as she runs through the palace.
Yeah. Another thing I was wondering about, did she sing in the theatrical or the theatrical one?
No, she does not, but I know she sings in the director's cut.
Yeah, because she started singing. I was like, I don't remember this.
Yeah. I know. I think I saw a clip of that and I was like, no, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't think it was needed.
No, I mean, I know that was the thing, again, going back to Lord of the Rings, because there's a lot of singing in those books. A lot. So that kind of made me think of that, like, well, a lot of these older things have singing in them, so let's throw in a song. Sometimes you don't need it.
It didn't need it.
No. No, we don't need to hear Lily sing. That's okay. We can convey it some other way.
Well, is there anything else in the middle of the movie you want to talk about before we get to the showdown?
Surprised you don't want to talk about the unicorns making whale sounds.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's true.
Because when we were watching it, you're like, is that a whale?
Yeah, that was a choice.
I think it's because the way I've always looked at it is, what more ethereal sound is there than a whale song?
Yeah, I suppose.
You know, it's just like, what sounds more haunting and alien and beautiful than a whale sound? That's kind of how I always looked at it. Because it's like, they do make noises like a horse. But would a unicorn actually sound like a horse? I think that's why they put those sounds in there. Because it's just so enchanting and haunting. And somebody who lives in the middle of the forest isn't going to know what a whale sounds like.
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't know.
I think it probably just stood out to me because I've watched too many nature documentaries.
Right. Well, even as a little kid, I was just like, that sounds like a whale. But I'm cool with it because it works. You know, and I love just the whole scene with the unicorns when they first come. I think they did a great job making them look very, you know, they're pearly white, they're clean, they're very beautiful horses. I know they had to like smuggle those horses out of another country to like film this movie. And I know they're all stallions or geldings, because I mean, you can tell when you watch the movie. As a little kid obsessed with horses, I'm like, that ain't no mare. But I don't care. You know, and I love the design of the horn, which is how I've done a lot of the art with my unicorns. And I love the placement on the forehead. And just, I thought they did a great job. And the sound stage where they filmed is just gorgeous. Like, they don't make sound stages like that anymore.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You said that it was all filmed on a soundstage. It really does look like outside.
Well, they filmed it on the 007 soundstage because it's like it was the biggest one at the time, I think, and then it burned down. It caught fire and the whole thing burned down. They had like so many days left of filming and the whole thing burned, so they had to rebuild it. And then the scenes with Nell's cabin, they filmed outside somewhere. And then I think the scene with the unicorns when she approaches them, I think they filmed that outside somewhere as well. I don't know what happened. I think it was a wire because all the trees are fake because Ridley Scott, who directed it, wanted to, originally I think he wanted to film in Yosemite at the Sequoias. That's where he got the idea for the forest, but realized you couldn't, film in a national park like that. So they built the trees. And they planted a bunch of plants. And so they had like birds living in there and all this other stuff. And they had planted flowers. And I think just like I'm pretty sure I read it was a wiring thing. And the whole set just burned down. They said there were flames shooting out the top of it and everything. Like I can't imagine being like, oh no, all my hard work.
It's the Lord of Darkness.
Yeah, Tim Curry's like, get me out of this damn makeup. I'm going to burn this soundstage down. And I know they used like 5 sound stages to build all the sets because it's how they did things in the 80s. You built the sets, which is why everything looks so big and alien and different. I love how Jack just wants to show her, because he loves her, the unicorns. And then it's kind of the first step of her giving into temptation when she goes to touch the unicorn. Because Jack tells her you can't do this, but she's a princess and she does what she wants, and it's kind of her giving into that temptation. It's like darkness is influencing her to do it because they're ready. Blix is there with the blow dart. And I always felt like it was him kind of like tempting her because that's what he does. He tempts people and pushes them to do things, but he doesn't make you do it. And I know in the director's cut, the mayor tries to chase her off.
I wondered about that because I didn't remember that happening.
Yeah, the mayor tries to chase her away, and when she won't leave, it's the stallion that she pets. Because in a lot of old folklore and a lot of like old unicorn lore, it's always the innocent maiden who can lure in the unicorn. So if you look at like old unicorn tapestries from like England and Britain and stuff, they always use an innocent maiden to bring in. It's always a stallion. It probably has something to do with virginity and all that stuff. And that's when they would kill the unicorn. You would always have the huntsman nearby, and when the innocent maiden drew in the unicorn, they would kill it. So that's how I always looked at it, was darkness influencing her to touch it. But I mean, honestly, I'd go try touch it too. It's a unicorn. I'd be like, no, it's all right, I'll touch it. But she doesn't mean it. She doesn't know what she's doing is wrong. Because, she's never seen anything like that before. And I like how Jack's just like, F this. It just turns and leaves. He's like,
well, and
nope.
Also, like, how is she supposed to know anyways? Because, like, I don't remember if this is a difference between the two versions, but in the one that I watched last night, she asked about it, and he said, it is known.
Yeah, it
So
is
it's
known
like,
these are
how?
sacred animals.
Like, if you've never been told,
Yeah.
how is it known?
Yep. And he tries, like, he tells her, no, you mustn't do this, and she's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pet that unicorn because it's pretty and I want to touch it. And I always love this scene where they hunt the unicorn down, because they filmed the death of the unicorn in reverse. When it's falling to the ground, you can tell it's all reversed from the unicorn standing up. Because it's easier to film a horse laying down than getting back up again. But I like it when the cherry blossoms are falling and the snow starts to fall, and you see there's a tornado in the background, because like the whole world's in chaos because they poisoned it, which is what I always assumed it was. And everything's starting to stop, and the lake starts to freeze, and Lily doesn't know what's going on. She has no idea, which is why she's still teasing Jack. She takes off her ring, and she's like, I'll marry whoever finds this. She thinks it's a joke. She thinks it's funny. And again, this is Jack knowing something's wrong, but he's so focused on Lily, he doesn't realize what they've done until, he almost drowns.
Mm-hmm.
But I always did like this scene, though, where the unicorn falls and they chop off its horn and they're just so proud of themselves. Good job, guys. You did the darkness, his wishes.
I liked the part where Blunder wants to take over.
I know, and at that time we don't know he's like an elf.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, I didn't even think twice about it. I'm just like, well, they're goblins. Like, they're always fighting amongst each other. So he's just like, my turn. I'm gonna do it. And then, I think they're trying to say that it was Darkness who popped up and punished him at the end, but I always assumed it was just like one of his leaders, because you don't see his horns. But they show up and he's like, it's only a joke.
I just figured it was like a dead guy or a mummy that had been dead a while, and he just
was like,
brought him back.
Yeah, he's just like, go get that horn and tell him to knock it off.
I love the way he just grabbed him and jumped in a hole.
I know. He's like, adios, amigos. And he just, off he goes. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, okay. Sure. That's one of those moments where you watch Legend and you see the line between Ridley Scott wanting to make a kid's fantasy film, because I'm like, this is all very kids fantasy, and then once we get to Darkness, we get to the more horror aspect that he kind of wanted to swing towards once they were filming, but was unable to.
I think they found a good balance, though.
It is a good balance. It is very, watching it as an adult, though, it is very kind of there's definitely different feel, this is very much fun and for kids when we're focusing on Screwball and Brown Tom and all them. And then, like I said, once we get to Lily being seduced and, Darkness talking about all his stuff, you're just like, and this is very much more a little bit older. But a lot of movies in the 80s were like that.
I was just thinking that's kind of a lot of just 80s movies in general.
Yeah, they kind of go from one feeling to another very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gremlins is another one.
Well, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, too, which is that and Gremlins inspired the PG-13 rating, because Legend's only PG, but if it was made now, it would be PG-13.
Oh, probably.
Just like Jaws. Jaws is PG,
mm-hmm.
which is hilarious.
Yeah, with some of the scenes in there.
The blood. Oh my.
Limbs.
Quint.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway.
Well, let's talk about when he is finally revealed, because I forgot that he was revealed so late in the film, you actually see him.
The theatrical cut, we have him in the beginning, because the executives or whatever.
So he was in the beginning then?
In the theatrical cut he is. In the director's cut he's not.
Because I was watching last night, I was like, I could have sworn we saw him, but he was just in shadow, and I guess I must have forgot that. But I guess that's another thing that they changed then.
Yep, they changed it for the American audience, because the American audience, what they were back then, I suppose it's true, they're like, you need to put something in there to hook people, because they're not going to be okay with just starting off with Jack and Lily.
Mm-hmm.
So that scene in the theatrical cut where Darkness is bringing Blix to him and saying, I need you to go do this.
Well, that scene was there. It's just you never saw him specifically.
Yeah, and you see him because he's all in shadow, and he's nails in his eyes are neon green, and I'm like, this is a choice. Why is he under a black light? But yeah, they do, but you don't actually see him in full makeup until much later in the film.
Yeah, the part after she has the dress on.
Yep. He
comes out of a mirror.
He pops out and he's like, hey, what's up? You look nice. Want to sit in this weird chair and have a snack with me? I do love it, though. I think it's funny, though, that they show, when he comes out, they show his hooves, but we never actually see him, foot to horn, his whole body, until the fight at the end with Jack, just because I imagine it was just easier to film Tim Curry from the waist
probably,
up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's wearing enough makeup and prosthetics as it is, and I think he had to be on some kind of stilt to make him taller.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're like, whatever we can do to make this a little bit easier, because I know he hated all that makeup.
I read that at one point he got so claustrophobic he
started
ripped
ripping
it
it
off
off
and like
and-
tore his own skin.
Yeah, and started hurting himself.
Yeah, that would have been.
And they had to like swap out the horns, which you can tell at the end when they had to when they go from the heavier horns to the fiberglass, because like the heavier horns don't move at all as he's moving his head and talking, because it had like a strap on the back of his neck to hold him up. But at the end when he's fighting, they kind of do move around a little bit. But I'm like, I'm fine with that because I understand how much pain he was in. I don't want Tim Curry to get hurt.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, when he first pops out of the mirror, which is another thing I love, that he comes out of a mirror. I just love that, because so many fantasy stories, there's mirror travel, and I'm just like, that's just such a great little detail of him coming out of a mirror. With all his little glittery, everything glitters. It must be part of the reason why I love the movie so much. There's sparkles everywhere.
It's very 80s.
Very 80s. Everybody has glitter. I do like, though, when him and Lily have their first conversation. I like the theatrical cut much more because she yells at him. Because he wants her to sit and talk. I do like that he's like, I value your thoughts. I want to talk to you. And she tells him, I do nothing for your pleasure. And he gets pissed, swipes all the food off the table, yells at her, and she laughs and she hides from him. I don't know why. I just always liked that, because now you're like, is she going along with this? Is she scared, or is she now playing him? Because she doesn't know yet what he wants to do. But I always love, though, that she gets that little bit of backbone. And she tells him, I do nothing for your pleasure. Because she's like, I'm not falling for this. And then when he gets mad and starts yelling, she laughs. Oh, don't forget all the fun stuff when we first go down into the hole. We got to get to the tree first with Meg Mucklebones, who I love. I love that she wants to eat him. And she doesn't want to eat the fairies because they taste bad.
Was she supposed to be like a specific kind of creature?
I think she's just a swamp witch.
Okay.
That's what I always took her. I think she's got a name or something, but I always just took her as a swamp witch. It's a swamp. Looks like a witch. You know, she wants to eat Jack. And, you know, they use the other little guys as bait. They're like, get out there. You go first. And she don't want to eat them because they taste bad. I always liked that. When she's like, foul-tasting fairy. And I'm like, oh, poor guy. You don't even taste good.
Well, I like that they distracted her with her own reflection.
It's very Medusa-like, too, where, because he tells her she's beautiful. I think he does that more in the director's cut. They have a little bit more conversation. Because he tells her she's beautiful and gets her to look at her reflection. It's a little bit more cut a little closer together in the theatrical cut, not as much talking.
Okay.
That's one of those situations where you're like, no, let them talk a little bit more. That makeup's fantastic.
It would have been. It's one of those things where it would be nice to have like some sort of a combination between the two.
Right.
Like have all the good parts of the extended version, but not every extended part of the extended version.
With the music from the theatrical cut.
Yes. Because that music did make a difference. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why I felt like it was dragging on.
Yep. Well, and I know that the theatrical cut, they did add a few more action scenes, like when they're going through the prison and those cat people jump out. Like that's...
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that is like
there.
the most jarring scene in the movie because they added it because they felt American audiences needed more action in their movie. I'm glad to know we're all just so ADD and stupid. They're like, throw an action scene in or they're going to not pay attention. But it's so jarring that you're like, what's happening? Why is this happening? Like, I don't mind it, but it's just so sudden that I'm like, you could have just made the other action scenes a little bit better, like when they're fighting those giant creatures and they boil the one alive, but the special effects are a little iffy, so you're kind of like, huh? Like, I know what's happening, but you could tell they're kind of limited by the times, because I think their budget for this was like $25 million, which was probably really good back then, but there are a few little spots in there where they added something just to have a little bit more action, where it's just a little, some of the cuts during the end, like when they're going through Darkness's place. Some of the cuts are a little odd, and I imagine that's probably just because that's where they cut from the director's cut. Because I know they had to cut the movie down a lot.
I mean, it was... Let me see if there's a time. 89 minutes for the theatrical cut. 114 minutes for the director's cut.
And I think it was originally like 155 minutes, so then they had to cut it like twice for the theatrical cut. So a lot of it's just like, I wonder what they cut here that would have made this scene a little smoother.
Well, there were parts where it just felt like it just took forever. So I'm sure they were just cutting out a lot of dialogue.
A lot of dialogue, I imagine. I don't think they would cut fight scenes. Because a lot of, choreography...
Not for ADD Americans.
No. That's why they shoved that weird scene with those cat people in there. And I'm just like... And then they don't even really fight. Gump just kind of hisses at him and tries to claw him. And I'm like, you don't have claws. You got little nails. But yeah, then we get to the end there, where they're getting the giant plates because they hear Darkness say, sunlight is my destroyer. And Gump's like... I have a plan. We're gonna kill him with sunlight. And again, Jack goes with it, but I don't think he's really thinking of any of that.
Probably not.
No, I think he's just like, where the hell's Lily? Where is she? Like, all this stuff is crazy. I've never been involved in any of this. And Gump and them are just like, yeah, this is just how it is here. He knew what the great
just an
tree
everyday
was.
Goblin fight.
Yeah, he knew where Darkness's lair was in the tree, which is another thing I love, is that the entrance is that giant tree. He knows all this, but Jack don't know. Jack don't know Jack.
This is only something that struck me last night, and maybe it wasn't filmed in the exact same way in the theatrical version, but like when they finally defeat Darkness, he's like, it's like a portal, or is that the mirror? Is like he's shot out into space or something?
In the 80s, we killed people by shooting them out into space. I always kind of took it like maybe he was being banished back into the netherworld. Because he's not dead. You can't kill him. Because it's balance. That's the whole point of legend, is balance. You can't have good without evil, and you can't have light without dark. So I just always looked at it like he just got banished back to the netherworld or back to hell, or... Because he's not the devil. He's just like a conduit of darkness, and I always just looked at it like he's just being sent back home.
Well, that scene, it reminded me of Alien.
That's what I mean. Like, back then, that's just how you killed things. You just shot them out into space. Yeah,
because I was watching it and that happened. I was like, this feels like Alien. And I was like,
well,
oh, wait, Ridley Scott.
He literally did Alien and Blade Runner right before he made this, so... He's like, how did that worked out well? I'll just shoot this one into space too. So, but yeah, I always thought it was weird because I'm like, is he going to space? And then when it like flashes and you see like stars flying, I'm like, or maybe he just went through a portal and he went back home. Because he's not dead, because we see him at the end, the very end, like before the credits start.
Which I don't think that was in the extended version either.
Nope, they cut that. It's in the theatrical cut, though. So, Americans, you got to keep them entertained. So he's not dead, but yeah, I don't think it's space. I think it's just like a portal, or maybe space in the middle of the planet. I don't know. This is a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Off you get.
There was also another scene after that I'm fairly certain I don't remember in the theatrical version, where they talk like maybe this was a dream.
Yes, there's like 3 separate endings they shot for this. And I think one of them is where Jack tries to tell Lily all of this was a dream. But she doesn't, she's like, nah. No.
I'm not a huge fan of, like, that feels like a cop-out to me.
And I don't really like the ending that we get. I don't like that Jack and Lily leave together. I like the alternate ending where he stays in the forest and she goes home, because that's where he's meant to be. Since he is an immortal child and a green man, he should stay in the forest. I wish that would have been the other ending, and she would have just gone home on her own. I like that ending more. But, I mean, I'm not mad at what we... Yeah. I mean, the scene at the end where they're all standing there with the unicorns waving, and I'm like, oh... Yay! But I always was like, why is Jack going with her? Like, you stay here. This is where you belong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she can just come visit you again. That's what you guys have been doing. Originally, Ridley Scott, when Jack and Gump go to confront darkness before they sacrifice the unicorn, they crawl up on a hill. And it's supposed to imply that it's supposed to be like all bones and stuff. Mm-hmm. And originally, Ridley Scott wanted it to be rotting corpses. But they're like, no, that's not children appropriate. And I always like how when they see Lily, Jack finally sees her and he's like, that's Lily, like she's with him. And Gump tells him, you know, judge her with your heart, not your eyes. And then 5 seconds later, he's like, kill her.
I wondered about that.
Which I can see it from both perspectives because Gump doesn't know Lily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he tells Jack, judge her, but then it's like, no, they're going to sacrifice the unicorn right now. So he's like, okay, you had your 5 seconds to decide, and we need to kill her because she's got the knife, and she's going to kill it, and we can't have that because they made it sound like he was going to slit its throat instead of cut the horn off.
Mm-hmm.
Like they needed the blood or something, because she says, I hear a throat aching to be cut. And with the way they pull the head down, I always assumed they were going to kill the mare differently because she has more power than the stallion does. But it just always made me laugh how Gump's like, you know what? Never mind. I need you to kill her, and then we need to kill him, and we just need to get down there right now. Like, time's up real fast. But like I said, Gump doesn't know her.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack doesn't really care about the rest. He just cares about her. So
Yeah.
Until he gets down there and has to fight darkness, which I always like that fight. I love that darkness just kind of whoops his ass because he's so much bigger. I love how much slower he moves because he is so much bigger. Mm-hmm. And that Jack pretty much just has to like duck and hide. You can tell the fight choreography of the 80s though, because some of it I'm just like, really? Okay. But I thought the fight scene is as good as they could probably get. And it gets us some great shots of full body darkness, you know, like when he runs at Jack and when he traps him with his horns. I mean, I just love all of that. That is such a good scene. Yeah. And then Jack sucker punches him, and I'm like, I don't think that would do it, but okay. I mean, he's a big creature, and you punched him in the face, but I mean, what can't Tom Cruise do? But I always liked their fight. I like how Darkness taunts him, and Lily's just over there passed out. She's out of the fight now, and the unicorn takes off running. I don't know where it ran off to. It's just like, bye, bitches. I'm out of here. You know, and then we get this scene where he puts his hand in the water of fire and grabs the horn, which is another thing I always took of. Unicorn horns have been used to purify water. And I always thought of it like, well, if that's like molten hot water, his hand should have melted off. But because
that's what I was wondering.
But I always just took it as, well, the horn's in there and it probably purified. I don't know. It's a fantasy story.
It's magic, whatever.
It's magic. You're not supposed to look too far into it unless you're a little kid. You're just like, wow, I want to figure all this out. The scene where Jack begs forgiveness from the unicorn is probably one of my favorite scenes ever. Just because the way it's shot, the lighting, it's just such a beautiful scene.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Cruise's acting is actually pretty good in this movie. Like, nobody's phoning it in. Like, they're all acting really good.
Yeah, a lot of times with a movie like this, people can be, I don't know, over dramatic.
Right.
Like, it feels fake.
Yeah.
But this felt natural.
Yeah, I mean, like, and for, like, Mia Sara, I think she did stage work before this, because for this to be her first movie, like, she's really good. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I mean, Tim Curry is...
Curry.
And he's the over-the-top dramatic one.
But it works for his character.
He needs to be, because he's the Lord of Darkness. He's a giant red monster.
Yeah.
Who spent, like, hours and hours in the makeup chair. And I think they asked him in an interview how much of that is actually you, and he's like, the upper lip. The rest of it's all prosthetics. And the fact that he can talk so well with those fangs, like, kudos, because if you watch a lot of vampire shows, and they get the fangs in, a lot of them talk funny.
They get a lisp.
Yeah, because, no, you don't have teeth there, but, you know, he he talks so well, and I think that's probably because he's done so much stage work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people who do stage plays and, like, Shakespeare and all this stuff, like, they have a different way of acting and emoting and projecting.
Yeah, they have to learn how to enunciate for an audience,
Yes.
and it probably translates.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why he just does such a good job as Darkness. Like you said, if we could combine the best things from the director's cut, like with them not cutting out that Lily's a princess,
Mm-hmm.
and a few other little extended moments where it explains things a little bit better, I would change the ending with Jack staying behind, because I do like that ending better. I don't mind that they show Darkness laughing at the end. After the music fades out, after Love by the Sun fades out, they show him laughing, just to kind of say he's not dead. But the whole point of the movie with the opening crawl is that you can't kill him. You have to have a balance, and for everything good, there has to be the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Which I always liked, because it's a good way to think about things. Like, so many movies, they're like, we have to defeat the evil. Well, you can't, though. You always have to have a balance, otherwise, what's going to happen? Like, you can't upset the balance, which is why I always loved Legend's opening crawl. And like I said, Tangerine Dream does such a great job with that 80s music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just, I've always loved that movie. It's got everything in it I could possibly want. Though I am glad that they did not do a few things like originally. Ridley Scott, I swear. Originally, Lily, instead of being seduced into that black dress and all that stuff, was supposed to turn into some kind of furry monster. Kind of like Hermione in Harry Potter. And was going to be seduced by Darkness, like actually seduced. I think this is when he was trying to push for the R rating, which I'm just like, okay. So human Lily in Darkness, okay. Furry cat lady in Darkness, no. No,
What?
that's weird.
What's the point of turning her into a furry thing?
I don't know. I don't know if that was going to be their way of, like, showing she gave in, but it would have definitely...
Was she like one of the cat people?
Maybe. All I know is it said, everything I've heard and said, they just said she was going to turn into some kind of hairy creature and possibly be tortured and then either seduced or assaulted by Darkness. Either one. And like I said, I think this is when Ridley Scott was kind of like, I want to do an R rating. Because it started off with him wanting to make a fantasy movie for his kids. Which is why you get Brown Tom and Screwball and Gump and all the little funny moments.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was like, actually, let's just hard pivot and make an R-rated movie instead. And by that time, the studio was like, nah. Like, we're not gonna do that. Which is why I think you get such a the first half of the movie is very 80s, very kind of like Labyrinth, very much. And then once Darkness shows up, you're kind of like, okay, this is a little bit more mature now, with a little sprinkling of Gump and Screwball and all of them in there to kind of balance it out.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I'm not going to say no to like a R rating for a fantasy movie, because that just means we get more monsters and violence and blood, but the whole thing that they wanted to do with Lily, I was just like, nah, fam, no. Let's just not do that.
Yeah.
That's weird. I like him trying to seduce her this way a lot more
with the
than...
magical faceless dress.
Yes, and that dress is gorgeous. I love that dress, and I don't even like dresses. But she looks amazing in that dress. Like, it's sensual and seductive without being over the top.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the complete opposite of what she had been wearing before. Like, she looks very, very good. And then, you know, at the end, somehow she's back in her normal clothes. I'm assuming that the magic just popped off and she's back in her princess...
I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
Yeah, she's back in her little princess outfit and, you know, Jack... Because, again, Gump is the one who brings the unicorn back. He takes the horn to the stallion and brings the unicorn back. Jack's over there diving in a pool trying to find Lily's ring so he can marry her. And I'm like, I guess you got your priorities. I mean, and Gump's in charge of it. But it's just so funny that he's the hero of the story. But he's not the one who brings
like, actually saved the world.
Yeah, you know, he stopped Darkness, but he mostly just got lucky. Well, actually, he didn't. It was Gump and them who stopped Darkness with the light. With the sunlight.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have come in with the sunlight, Jack would have lost.
Yeah.
He cut off his hand, but I think that was only after the sunlight hit. It was. because he throws the horn, because Darkness is like, give me that. And he throws it at him, and it stabs him in the stomach. And then the sunlight hits and blasts him against that archway. And then he pulls the horn out, and Jack cuts his hand off to get it back. And then he gets blasted out into oblivion. But yeah, if it wouldn't have been for Gump and them, Jack would have lost. He wouldn't have won that fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the hero is Gump. Jack was supposed to be their hero, and they did need him to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it was really Gump and them all working together. I guess they all worked together.
It was a group effort.
It was a group effort. But Jack's priorities were definitely on Lily and not saving the unicorn.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it would have meant more if he would have just stayed behind at the end. I feel like this is totally the kind of movie, though, that if it wouldn't have flopped, would totally have like 3 sequels. And Jack would have been played by a different character every time.
You know what? You're probably right.
Because Tom Cruise does not talk highly of this movie. I don't think he liked it. Which, I don't know why. Like, get over yourself, Tom. It's a good movie. You were young. Like, it's a good movie. But, because you can tell, you know, at the end when Darkness pops up, I don't know if they, like, were thinking of plotting a sequel. I'm glad they never did.
It doesn't feel like something that needed a sequel. It's a good one and done.
Yeah, it's like it's you're done. It's a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
The story's over. You don't need to continue on and like, oh, Darkness is back. You know, and this time in CGI.
Well, isn't it a Fox film, which means Disney owns it, so maybe they will make a sequel?
I think it's Universal.
Oh.
It's Universal. Yeah, because the Universal logo is space, and so I always kind of laugh at the end when Darkness gets blasted into space. So I'm like, oh, is he going back to the studio? Universal took him back. Yep, it's a Universal film, because Ridley Scott did this right after Alien and Blade Runner, because a lot of the people who helped work on those helped work on this. Because it does have that Ridley Scott feel, but you would never really realize it was a Ridley Scott movie, because it's so different from his other movies.
Yeah.
I mean, who watches Alien and Blade Runner and then watches Legend and is like, oh. You know, it's not like John Carpenter, where all his movies kind of have the same feeling, or like Christopher Nolan. Ridley Scott's movies are kind of all over the place, especially now. But
well, I don't think I would have even noticed, except you've said that, and then the end reminded me when he's blasting off into space.
It's just like that alien. Both times. Both aliens.
I guess it's a good way to dispatch a terrible creature.
I'm telling you. I mean, there's really not a lot that can get through space. So, or the other world, or the netherworld, wherever Darkness got banished back to. Probably wherever his quote-unquote parents are to get lectured. Like, you failed. Bravo.
I did wonder about his parents. Like, who are they? What do they look like?
Yeah, I should have written it. I know I've read before, like, what they're supposed to be, but I don't think they're actual entities. I think they're more of, like, a thought or a muse kind of thing. Because when his mother talks to him, it's as a shadow and, like, a whisper on the air. So I don't think they're actual creatures. I think they're more like muses or suggestions or entities. That's how I always looked at it. I don't think there's like a horned lady and a bigger horned guy waiting for him back home, you know? But I could be wrong. Oh God, that would have been the sequel. That would have been terrible. Just imagining a Darkness creature as it... No.
This is extremely random. I'm imagining his father is a Minotaur and his mother is Doja Cat in that red getup that she wore to that award show.
Oh God. That's better than what I was imagining. I was imagining a Tim Curry-esque creature with like breasts. Like, oh no. That doesn't look flattering at all. But yeah, we could throw a Minotaur in there and poor Doja Cat. But yeah, Legend, it's just a very 80s movie. Like you said, it's like the most 80s movie.
Extremely 80s.
Extremely 80s movie. I mean, it ranks right up there with like Big Trouble in Little China for like just that you watch it and you're like, yep, This was in the 80s. Absolutely. Or like Labyrinth, I'm pretty sure that was in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Dragon Slayer, looking at the movies on my shelf over there and just listening to them off. Dragon Slayer is in the 80s.
That's another one I need to see.
I can let you borrow it. It's just right over there on the shelf. I haven't watched it in forever, actually. And like Clash of the Titans, though, wasn't 80s, I don't think. But that one's worth a watch. Not the new one. Not the one with Sam Worthington. No, was that it? No? The guy who's in it, I don't know. You gotta watch the one with the claymation monsters. But, yeah. Like I said, it's just a good movie for makeup and costume design and the stage pieces and the sets. And, you know, it's just that time right in there, right before CGI. And you're like, yes, all of this is real. They're running through the trees. The unicorns look good. Like I said, nowadays, Darkness would be
fully CGI.
Or it would be like a Vision kind of thing where they paint him red and have the markers on him. So he's still has his face and his mouth and the rest of him's all CGI. I just love that it's just one of those cult classics now that it bombed in the box office, but now everybody who watches it either really like it or you really don't. I remember watching it with a friend's family and it got over and they were like, her dad was like, well, that wasn't very good. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, I didn't really like it that much. And I was like, oh no.
I could never speak to you again.
I was like, I don't think we can be friends anymore. Your dad said you didn't like that movie. Like, oh no. We were like in middle school or something at like a sleepover, so.
That does seem like a good sleepover movie for middle school age kids.
Well,
first scary movie.
For
most kids.
For most
not
kids,
you.
no. I'm pretty sure I made that same friend watch The Thing and we got halfway through it and she made me turn it off. And I don't think she ever forgave me for trying to make her watch that. We got like halfway through when it starts to get real and she was just like, well, you need to turn this off now. And I'm like, why? She's like, 'cause it's scary. I'm like, oh, sorry. I wasn't aware. So yeah, I didn't make her finish it. I think we watched her like Lion King after that. It's like, well, let's balance that out with some Disney, I guess. You know, you watch one scary thing, you gotta balance it out with something a little less scary. Like a friend and I went and saw 28 Days Later. It's a zombie movie. And it scared the hell out of me. So when we got back to her house, she's like, what do you want to watch now? I'm like, let's watch The Ring. It's a little less scary than that other movie. And I can make fun of this one. Have you ever watched that?
Yes. I actually have watched one scary movie.
The little girl, Samara. That's the chick who voices Lilo.
Yeah.
Which
the thing that I remember about that movie was the horse dying, and that's what scarred me.
I know. I was just like, no, not the horse. You kill people you want, but not the horse.
I don't remember much of anything else in the movie. I just remember the horse scene. I was like, this is terrible.
I think I remember watching it and being like, yeah, this is definitely a lot less scary than that other movie we just watched in theater. Legend, though, is just, they don't make movies like Legend anymore. Everything that's going to come out fantasy now is going to be like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, which I'm fine with to a certain point.
Yeah.
I know you haven't watched those, but, you know, they don't make fantasy movies like that. I mean, Lord of the Rings was like the last great fantasy, and it's because it took a lot of stuff like what Legend did. You get a lot of practical effects.
Yes.
A lot of sets, a lot of miniatures, a lot of filming out in the wild. You know, the CGI is minimal too, you know, until you get to the third movie. And obviously there's a lot more CGI in the third movie than the first two. But
you can't really practical effects the
Oliphants?
Yes.
No, not really. You know, and it's just one of those movies. Oh, and Excalibur. Excalibur's a really good movie, too. That's one of my mom's favorite movies. Some of it's hard to watch because it's kind of sad. But it's another good movie. It's just those old fantasy movies where, damn, they just went for it. They're like, it doesn't need to make sense, but it needs to look cool. Yep. It'll always be my number one movie, I think. I don't know if they'll ever make another movie that just makes me as emotional as a person who's not very emotional. You know, I don't think anything's really even come close to toppling it over, actually. I think a lot of the childhood nostalgia has a bit to play with it, too.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, when I was younger, this movie had inspired so much poetry, so much writing, so much artwork, so much, because it's got so many good little elements to it. It's just a lot of great ideas that, even though a lot of people don't like it, it bombed, it's just a great fantasy movie. And it's safe for all ages. For the most part.
Yeah.
Unless you're really scared of... Just tell people, it's just Tim Curry. It's just Tim Curry. It's okay. He can't hurt you.
It's just Tim Curry.
It's just Tim Curry.
You.
No.
If I was one of those people who made clickbaity titles for my YouTube videos, I can just... This one could be called It's Just Tim Curry. He can't hurt you.
He can't hurt you. It's okay. It's okay. Or you're going to watch it and be like, huh, why does he look a lot better than I think he should? Like, that darkness is ripped, man. You're just like, somebody's been doing their crunches.
And getting a tan.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's well done.
Yes. He is. He looks quite good. Of course, that chin, though.
The chin was very...
The chin is quite prominent. You think it'd be the horns and the red skin, but no, you're like, oh, look at that. That chin is quite... It's kind of like when you see Thanos for the first time. You're just like, oh, look at that chin. That's a choice. But it works. He looks great.
I think with Thanos, I've seen him so many times, I've kind of gotten desensitized to the fact that he has a chin that's like a giant raisin.
He just looks like Bruce Willis. Like in a raisin. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's probably good a place as any to wrap things up.
Mm-hmm.
So, until next time.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to iHeart Movies. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-hosts as well, and if you want more content from us, check out one of the other podcasts in the iHeart Movies podcast network, or check out my brand new Patreon. My link tree, as well as any other relevant links, will be in the description. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.